Michael Chen couldn't see the world, but he could hear what most people missed. The soft catch in someone's breath when they lied. The slight tremor in a voice hiding something important. The way footsteps changed when someone was afraid. Born blind in a small town outside of Boston, Michael had spent his life developing his other senses to navigate a world built for sighted people. His parents never treated his blindness as a limitation, just a different way of experiencing life. "You listen better than anyone I know," his father often told him. That's a rare gift. By the time Michael was 10, he could identify dozens of people just by their footsteps. By 15, he could tell when someone was nervous or hiding something just by the subtle changes in their voice. His mother joked that he would make either a great detective or a human lie detector someday. No one expected him to choose law. "Law school? Are you sure?" his high school counselor had asked, concern evident in her voice. The amount of reading alone would be challenging but not impossible, Michael had finished for her. Text-to-speech software has come a long way. So have I. He graduated from Harvard Law at the top of his class. His professors noted that while other students got lost in the weeds of legal language, Michael had an uncanny ability to cut through complexity and find the human heart of each case. Now 32, Michael had built a modest but respected practice focusing mainly on disability rights cases. His small office sat on the second floor of an old building downtown. He'd chosen it specifically because the landlord had agreed to install proper accessibility features, not just for him, but for any clients with mobility issues. It was a Tuesday morning in April when he heard unfamiliar footsteps approaching his door. Light, hesitant steps, the sound of someone carrying a heavy burden that wasn't physical. "Come in," Michael called before the person even knocked. The footsteps paused, startled, then continued into his office. "How did you know I was there?" a woman's voice asked. The accent was slight, Mexican or perhaps Salvadoran. Michael smiled. "The floors in this old building creak in very specific ways." "I'm Michael Chen." "Maria Gonzalez," she replied. Her voice was tired, the kind of exhaustion that sleep couldn't fix. "Your secretary isn't at her desk. Lily steps out for coffee around this time. She'll be back soon. Please have a seat." Michael heard the chair across from his desk shift as Maria sat down. He noticed her breathing shallow and quick. She was nervous, maybe scared. "What brings you to my office today, Ms. Gonzalez?" he asked, leaning forward slightly. "Everyone says you're a good lawyer," she began. "That you take cases others won't." Michael tilted his head. "Sometimes. It depends on the case. 6 lawyers have already turned me down." The defeat in her voice was palpable. "They say it's not worth their time." "Why don't you tell me what happened and I'll decide for myself if it's worth my time." Maria took a deep breath. "I worked at Global Tech Industries for 8 years. Assembly line, electronics division. 3 months ago there was an accident." Michael heard her shift in her chair, the sound of fabric rustling. She was showing him something. "You can't see this, I'm sorry," she said quickly. "Describe it to me," Michael replied gently. "Burns along my right arm and side. The doctors say I'll have the scars forever, but that's not what worries me." Her voice dropped lower. "The headaches started a few weeks after. Then dizziness. I've passed out twice at home. The company doctor says it's not related to the accident. Just stress. My own doctor isn't so sure, but all the tests come back normal." "What exactly happened during this accident?" "They said a cooling unit malfunctioned, released some kind of gas. They evacuated the floor, gave us all checkups, said everything was fine." Maria's voice hardened. "But Jorge from maintenance told me they replaced all the ventilation systems the next week. And 2 other workers from my section have gotten sick too." Michael's fingers tapped thoughtfully on his desk. "And you think these illnesses are connected to the accident?" "I know they are. But Global Tech is saying I can't prove it, that I'm just looking for a payout. And the other lawyers you've seen? They all say the same thing. Going against Global Tech is a waste of time. They have too many lawyers, too much money. One actually laughed and said I'd have better luck playing the lottery." Michael heard the gentle tap of a tear hitting fabric. Maria was crying silently. "Ms. Gonzalez, do you have any documentation? Anything at all about the accident or your medical condition?" "Some. I have the incident report, my medical records. Jorge slipped me a maintenance log from that day, but I don't know if it helps." Michael nodded slowly. Most lawyers would see this case exactly as the others had. a difficult workers' comp claim against a powerful company with virtually no chance of a meaningful settlement. The smart business move would be to thank Maria for her time and send her on her way. But there was something in her voice, a certainty, a clarity amid the fear and exhaustion, and something else that bothered him. Why would a company completely replace ventilation systems after what they claimed was a minor incident? "Tell me about the other workers who got sick," he said. "Anna and Tomas. We all worked the same section. Anna has the same symptoms as me. Thomas is worse. He's been hospitalized twice. Have they sought legal help?" Anna tried, got nowhere. "Thomas is too scared. He's the only one working in his family." Michael leaned back in his chair. His instincts were buzzing. 6 lawyers had seen nothing but a difficult case with a small potential payout. Michael heard something else entirely. The first notes of a pattern, a secret being kept. "Ms. Gonzalez, I'd like to take your case." The silence that followed was heavy with disbelief. "Really? You believe me?" "I believe there's something here worth investigating. I'm not promising results, but I promise to take you seriously." The sound of Maria crying openly now filled the small office. Not tears of sadness, but of relief, of finally being heard. Just then, Michael heard Lily's familiar footsteps returning to her desk outside. "Lily will help you fill out some paperwork," Michael said, pressing the intercom button on his desk. "And I'll need copies of everything you have, incident reports, medical records, the maintenance log. Of course, anything you need," Maria said, her voice steadier now. As Lily took Maria to fill out the necessary forms, Michael sat alone in his office, thinking. He'd built his practice on taking cases that mattered, not cases that paid well. This one felt important, though he couldn't quite explain why yet. The next morning, Michael arrived at his office earlier than usual. He'd spent half the night listening to his screen reader go through Maria's documents. The incident report was suspiciously sparse on details. The medical report showed clear evidence of chemical exposure, despite the company doctor's dismissals. But it was the maintenance log that truly caught his attention. It documented the replacement of contaminated filtration systems on 3 floors, not just where the accident occurred. Whatever had been released that day hadn't been contained to a single area. Michael picked up his phone and called a former classmate who now worked for the Environmental Protection Agency. "Tom, it's Michael Chen. I need a favor. What can you tell me about chemical safety protocols at electronics manufacturing plants, specifically cooling systems and what might be in them?" The conversation lasted nearly an hour. By the end, Michael had a list of possibilities. Chemicals that could cause symptoms like Maria's. Chemicals that companies like Global Tech would have every reason to keep quiet about using. Later that afternoon, Michael's phone rang. "Mr. Chen? This is Ana Rodriguez. Maria Gonzalez gave me your number. She said you're helping her with the Global Tech incident." "Yes, I've taken her case," Michael confirmed. "I worked with her." "I'm sick too," Ana said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I'm not the only one. There are others from different departments, different shifts. Some worked at Global Tech years ago and are just getting sick now." Michael felt a chill run down his spine. "How many others, Ms. Rodriguez?" "I know of 12 for sure, but there could be more." Michael reached for his voice recorder. "Tell me everything." As Anna spoke, Michael realized this wasn't just a workers' compensation case anymore. The pattern was emerging more clearly, a pattern of illness, of cover-ups, of people being silenced. By the time he hung up, Michael knew he had stumbled onto something much bigger than he had initially thought. This wasn't just one accident affecting a few workers. The evidence pointed to a systematic problem affecting dozens, possibly hundreds of people. What had started as a simple case no one wanted was rapidly becoming something else. Entirely. Something that powerful people would fight very hard to keep buried. Michael opened his laptop and began drafting a litigation strategy. He would need help, medical experts, environmental specialists, former Global Tech employees willing to speak out. As his fingers moved across the keyboard, he couldn't shake the feeling that taking this case would change everything. For Maria, for the other victims, and for himself. What he couldn't possibly know yet was just how far the ripples of this case would spread, or how many lives it would ultimately touch. The blind lawyer who could hear the truth hidden in a voice had just taken the first step on a journey that would eventually shock an entire nation. Michael's office became a hub of activity in the weeks that followed. Lily had cleared out the small conference room, where stacks of documents now covered every surface. Michael had hired a part-time assistant named David, a pre-law student, to help read through the mountain of paperwork they were gathering. "These medical reports don't match up with the incident statements," David said one afternoon, the frustration clear in his voice. Global Tech's official report says the exposure was minimal and contained to a 20-foot radius. But Maria's doctor noted chemical burns consistent with direct exposure to industrial solvents. Michael nodded, pacing the room as he often did while thinking. "And the maintenance logs show they replaced ventilation systems on 3 floors, not just where the accident happened. Which means whatever was released spread throughout the building," Lily added from the doorway. She'd become increasingly involved in the case, staying late most evenings to help organize their findings. Michael stopped pacing. "We need to understand exactly what chemicals we're dealing with. Global Tech's official report mentions a proprietary cooling agent. That could be anything." "I might have something on that," David said, shuffling through some papers. "I was looking through Global Tech's supplier contracts. They receive regular shipments from a company called ChemSynth Industries. The manifest lists something called Compound FC230. Can we find out what that is?" Lily asked. "Already tried," David replied. "It's not in any public database I can access. They've classified it as a trade secret." Michael frowned. "That's convenient. We need an insider, someone who knows what they're working with." The room fell silent for a moment, then Lily spoke up. "What about Jorge, the maintenance worker who gave Maria the logs?" "Too risky," Michael said. "He's already risking his job by helping Maria. We need someone who isn't on Global Tech's radar." As if on cue, Michael's phone rang. The caller ID announced an unknown number. "Michael Chen speaking," he answered, putting the call on speaker. "Mr. Chen." The voice was male, older, with a slight rasp. "I understand you're looking into the incident at Global Tech." Michael straightened. "Who is this?" "Someone who knows what really happened. I worked in product development at Global Tech for 15 years before retiring last year. I can't give you my name, not yet." Michael exchanged glances with Lily and David, then said, "How did you get my number?" "Word gets around. There are people inside Global Tech watching what you're doing. Some of us have been waiting for someone to start asking questions. What can you tell me about the accident?" "It wasn't an accident," the caller said flatly. "What happened to Maria Gonzalez and the others was inevitable. The cooling systems in that facility use compound FC230. It's highly effective but dangerously unstable when exposed to high temperatures. The company knows this." "What exactly is FC230? Michael asked. "A fluorocarbon compound developed by Global Tech's chemical division. It was originally created as an industrial solvent, but they discovered it had excellent cooling properties. The problem is that when it breaks down, it releases several toxic byproducts. And Global Tech knows about these risks? They've known for years. I was part of the team that documented the health effects: headaches, dizziness, respiratory problems at first. Long-term exposure can lead to neurological damage, liver failure." Michael felt a chill run down his spine. "You documented this. Do you have proof?" "I do. Reports, internal memos, test results. I kept copies when I left." "Why are you coming forward now?" There was a long pause. "My granddaughter works at Global Tech. Same division as Maria. She's been having headaches, nosebleeds. When I heard about your investigation, I can't stay silent anymore. We need to meet," Michael said. "Not yet. I need to be careful. Global Tech has resources and they don't hesitate to use them against whistleblowers. Then how do we get the documents?" "There's a coffee shop on Elm Street, Pete's Place. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. sit at the table near the back window. Someone will bring you a USB drive." The line went dead. "Could be a trap," Lily said after a moment. "Or our best lead," Michael countered. "David, I want you to go. Take your laptop, act like you're studying. If anything feels off, leave immediately." The next day, David returned with a small USB drive and a shaken expression. A woman dropped it off. All she said was, "He wanted you to have this. Be careful." Then she left. When they plugged in the drive, they found hundreds of files, research reports, safety assessments, internal communications. It took days to go through everything, but the picture that emerged was damning. Global Tech had known about the dangers of FC230 for nearly a decade. They had documented cases of worker illness dating back years, across multiple facilities. Most disturbing was an internal memo from 5 years earlier. discussing the cost of switching to a safer alternative versus the potential liability of continuing to use FC230. Listen to this, Lily read aloud. Projected compensation for health claims, even assuming worst-case exposure scenarios, remains significantly less expensive than facility-wide retrofitting with alternative cooling systems. Recommendation: continue use of FC230 with enhanced containment protocols. They did a cost-benefit analysis on their workers' health, Michael said, his voice tight with anger, and decided it was cheaper to let people get sick. As they dug deeper, they discovered that Maria's accident wasn't isolated. Similar incidents had occurred at 3 other global tech facilities across the country. Each time the company had followed the same playbook: minimize the incident, attribute symptoms to unrelated causes, settle individual claims quietly with strict confidentiality agreements. Michael decided it was time to expand their investigation. He reached out to labor attorneys in cities with global tech facilities, asking about similar cases. He contacted occupational health specialists familiar with industrial chemical exposure. Slowly, a network began to form. 2 weeks later, Michael received another anonymous call. "You're making waves, Mr. Chen," the same raspy voice said. "Global Tech's legal department has had 3 emergency meetings about you in the past week. I need to know who I'm talking to," Michael insisted. A long pause, then. "Howard Phillips. I was senior research director at Global Tech until last year." "Why did you leave, Mr. Phillips?" "Officially, retirement. Unofficially, I couldn't keep ignoring what was happening. I tried to push for changes from the inside for years. When that failed, I started gathering evidence." "Are you willing to go on record?" "Not yet. But I'm not the only one with concerns inside the company. I can help you find others." The next day, Michael filed a formal discovery request, demanding Global Tech release all information related to compound FC230 and worker health incidents over the past 10 years. It was an aggressive move that he knew would provoke a response. The response came faster than expected. 3 days later, as Michael was leaving his office, a black sedan pulled up beside him on the street. "Mr. Chen," a smooth voice called out. "Got a minute to talk?" Michael stopped, his cane tapping the pavement. "Who's asking?" "Robert Vance, Chief Legal Officer for Global Tech Industries." The car door opened. "I thought we might have a conversation before this situation escalates unnecessarily." "I prefer to have conversations in my office, during business hours with my own counsel present," Michael replied evenly. "Of course. Professional courtesy." Vance's tone remained pleasant, but Michael could hear the edge beneath it. "I just wanted to express Global Tech's willingness to resolve Ms. Gonzalez's complaint quickly and generously. We are prepared to offer a settlement that would cover all her medical expenses, plus substantial compensation for her discomfort." "And what about the others who've been affected?" A brief pause. "What others would those be, Mr. Chen?" Michael smiled thinly. "I think you know exactly who I'm talking about, Mr. Vance. Tell your clients I'm not interested in settling just Maria's case. This isn't going away with one check." That night, Michael worked late, recording notes on everything they'd discovered so far. Around midnight, his office phone rang. "Michael Chen," he answered, rubbing his tired eyes. "Mr. Chen, this is Jorge from Global Tech Maintenance." The man's voice was hushed, frightened. "Maria gave me your number. I need to talk to you right away." "What's happened?" "They know about the maintenance logs I gave Maria. They've been questioning everyone on my team. I think I'm being followed. Come to my office tomorrow." "We can—" "No!" Jorge cut him off. "I can't be seen going there." "They're watching," Michael thought quickly. "There's a diner called Rosie's on 7th Street. Meet me there at 6 a.m. before the morning rush." "Okay, and Mr. Chen, there's something else you should know. The accident in Maria's section, it wasn't the first. There was another one last year, in the research building. They covered it up completely." The next morning, Michael arrived at the diner early and took a booth at the back. He ordered coffee and waited. 6 o'clock came and went. By 6:30, he was concerned. By 7, he knew something was wrong. He called Jorge's number, but it went straight to voicemail. As he was paying his bill, his phone rang. "Mr. Chen, this is Officer Rivera with the police department. We have a situation involving someone who has your business card in his wallet." "Jorge Mendes." Michael's heart sank. "What happened?" "Car accident early this morning. Mr. Mendez ran a red light and collided with a truck. He's in critical condition at Memorial Hospital. The coincidence seemed too convenient to be true. Michael immediately called Lily and asked her to go to the hospital to make sure Jorge wasn't left alone. Then he called David. "I need you to go to my apartment right away," he instructed. "Make copies of everything we have on the global tech case. Store them in multiple locations. And call Howard Phillips. Tell him we need to talk today." By the time Michael returned to his office, he knew the rules of engagement had changed. Global Tech wasn't just trying to make the case go away. They were actively working to silence people. He sat at his desk, fingers running over the braille display of his computer as he considered his next move. They had evidence, they had witnesses, but going against a corporation with Global Tech's resources would be the fight of his career. His office door opened, and Lily walked in. He could tell from her footsteps that something was wrong. "Jorge didn't make it," she said quietly. "The doctors say he had a stroke while driving. That's what caused the accident." Michael was silent for a long moment. "A stroke? Just like Thomas from Maria's department. You think it's connected to the chemical exposure? I think nothing about this is coincidental anymore." Michael's hands formed fists on his desk. "They've been poisoning their workers for years, Lily. And they're willing to go to extraordinary lengths to keep it quiet. What do we do now?" she asked. Michael stood up, his expression resolute. "We stop playing defense. It's time to take this fight public." Michael knew that taking the fight public would put a target on his back. He wasn't wrong. The first sign came 3 days after Jorge's funeral. Michael was dictating notes late one evening when his office phone rang. "Is this Michael Chen?" A woman's voice, unfamiliar and anxious. "Yes, who's calling?" "My name is Diane. I work in administration at Global Tech." She spoke quickly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I shouldn't be calling you, but people need to know what's happening." Michael sat up straighter. "What's happening, Diane?" "They're destroying documents. Anything related to FC-230? Worker complaints, safety inspections? Legal sent a memo this morning ordering a company-wide document retention review." He could hear the air quotes in her voice. "It's a purge. Can you get copies of anything before it's gone?" A pause. "I already did. Not everything, but enough. Personnel files for workers who reported symptoms. Some of the original safety studies on FC-230. That's incredibly helpful, Diane. And brave." "I'm scared," she admitted. "They're monitoring phone calls, emails. They've hired extra security. We need to meet somewhere safe," Michael said. "Somewhere they wouldn't expect." They arranged to meet the following day at a public library 2 towns over. Michael asked Lily to go in his place. A blind man would be too memorable, too easy to identify. When Lily returned with a thick envelope of documents, her footsteps were quick and uneven. She was frightened. "Someone followed me," she said, closing Michael's office door behind her. "A man in a dark suit. I spotted him outside the library, then again at the train station." Michael frowned. "Did he approach you?" "No, just watched. I lost him by jumping on a train just as the doors were closing." She placed the envelope on his desk. Diane was terrified. She said they've been questioning everyone in her department, checking computer logs, access records. As Michael's fingers moved over the braille translations of the documents Diane had provided, the picture grew even darker. Global Tech had been aware of problems with FC-230 from the beginning. Early test animals had developed neurological symptoms after exposure. Rather than abandoning the compound, they had simply adjusted the exposure thresholds they considered acceptable. More disturbing were the personnel files. Over the past 5 years, dozens of workers had reported symptoms consistent with chemical exposure. Most had been diagnosed with unrelated conditions: stress, migraines, inner ear infections. Those who pushed harder for answers found themselves facing performance reviews, reassignments, or layoffs. "They've been covering this up for years," Michael said, anger evident in his voice. "And they've gotten very good at it." That night, Michael stayed late at the office, organizing their evidence and planning their next move. Around midnight, he heard a noise from the outer office, a soft click like a door being carefully opened. Michael froze, listening intently. Another sound, the subtle creak of weight on the old floorboards. Someone was in the reception area. Silently, Michael reached for his phone, only to find the line dead. His cell phone was charging on the other side of the room. The footsteps stopped outside his office door. Michael reached into his desk drawer and pressed the small button on the digital recorder he kept there. Then he took a deep breath and called out, I can hear you out there. What do you want? The door opened slowly. Two sets of footsteps entered, heavy, deliberate. Mr. Chen, a man's voice said. Working late, I see. Who are you? Michael demanded, standing up behind his desk. Just think of us as concerned parties, a second voice answered. We understand you've been collecting some sensitive information about global tech industries. I'm representing clients who were injured due to global tech's negligence, Michael replied evenly. Everything I'm doing is legal and above board, one of the men chuckled. That's one way of looking at it. Another would be that you're making accusations that could damage a respected company's reputation and cost a lot of people their jobs. If exposing the truth damages global tech's reputation, that's not my problem, the first man's voice hardened. Here's the thing, Mr. Chen. We need you to understand the situation clearly. You're one small-time lawyer. Global Tech employs over 15,000 people. They have friends in government and regulatory agencies. This case will never see the inside of a courtroom. Michael heard them moving around his office, picking things up, opening drawers. What are you doing? He demanded. Just looking around, the second man said casually. Nice setup you have here. Very organized. I imagine that's important when you can't see. Get out of my office before I call the police. Phone lines seem to be down in this building, the first man remarked. Bad luck. They continued moving around the room. Michael heard papers rustling, drawers opening and closing. We're not here to hurt you, the second man said. Just to deliver a message. Drop this case. Global Tech is prepared to compensate Ms. Gonzalez generously. Everyone wins, and if I don't drop it? The first man sighed. Life gets complicated. For you, for your staff, for your clients. Especially for people like Howard Phillips, who should be enjoying their retirement instead of causing trouble. Michael felt a chill. They knew about Phillips. Are you threatening me? Threatening? No, we're explaining consequences. Big difference. Something heavy hit the floor. The sound of a file box being dumped. Oops, sorry about the mess. For the next few minutes, Michael stood rigidly behind his desk as the men systematically ransacked his office, tossing files, knocking over furniture, destroying the organizational system that allowed him to work independently. Finally, they stopped. Think about what we said. Mr. Chen, some fights aren't worth the cost. The first man's voice came from near the door now. By the way, that braille reader thing on your computer? Expensive equipment. Would be a shame if something happened to it. After they left, Michael waited 5 minutes before moving, making sure they were truly gone. Then he carefully made his way across the destroyed office to retrieve his cell phone. His hands were shaking as he dialed. David? It's Michael. I need you to come to the office right away. And call Lily too. By morning, they had documented the break-in and filed a police report, though Michael had little hope that it would lead anywhere. The intruders had been careful not to identify themselves or leave evidence. What they didn't know was that Michael had been even more careful. The most critical documents weren't kept in the office at all, but in a safe deposit box at his bank. And everything on his computer was backed up to multiple secure locations. They're getting desperate, Lily observed as they surveyed the damage. This is good, right? It means we're onto something. It also means they're willing to go to extreme lengths to stop us, Michael replied. We need to be smarter, more careful. That afternoon, Michael called an emergency meeting with his small team, now expanded to include 2 paralegals and another attorney who had agreed to help with the case. They gathered at David's apartment away from the office that might now be under surveillance. They're watching us, probably listening too, Michael told the group, so we change how we work. No discussing sensitive information over phones or email, no keeping important documents in one place. What about our clients? One of the paralegals asked. Are they in danger too? Michael nodded grimly. We need to warn them all, and we need to move faster. The longer this drags on, the more time Global Tech has to destroy evidence and intimidate witnesses. I have an idea, David said. My cousin works for the Environmental Justice Network. They connect activists across the country. If Global Tech has been doing this at multiple facilities, there must be other victims, other witnesses out there. Michael considered this. Make the call, but be careful what you say and where you say it. Over the next week, they reached out to environmental groups, worker advocacy organizations, and medical professionals specializing in chemical exposure. Responses began trickling in, stories, similar to Maria's from different Global Tech locations across the country. A machine operator in Arizona who developed tremors and memory problems after a ventilation malfunction. A quality control inspector in Michigan, whose mysterious symptoms were dismissed as psychosomatic until she was finally diagnosed with chemical-induced liver damage. Cluster of miscarriages among female workers at a Texas facility, written off as coincidence until someone noticed they all worked in departments using FC-230 cooling systems. Pattern after pattern emerged, all pointing to the same conclusion. Global Tech had been knowingly exposing workers to dangerous chemicals for years, covering up incidents and silencing those who raised concerns. Michael's apartment became their new base of operations. They worked in shifts, gathering testimonies, building a case that would be too big, too public for Global Tech to bury. "We need to find a smoking gun," Michael said one evening as they reviewed their evidence. "Something they can't explain away or deny." "What about Howard Phillips?" Lily suggested. "He has the internal research, the memos proving they knew the risks." Michael shook his head. "They know about him. It's too dangerous to involve him directly right now." "Then we need someone else from the inside," David said. "Someone they don't know about yet." As if on cue, Michael's secure phone, a prepaid cell that only his team had the number for, rang. "Hello? Mr. Chen?" A man's voice, young, nervous. "My name is Kevin. I work in Global Tech's Environmental Compliance Department. Howard Phillips said I could trust you." Michael's pulse quickened. He was right. "What can I do for you, Kevin?" "I have something you need to see. Internal memos about FC-230. They prove the company has been falsifying safety reports to the EPA for years. Where can we meet?" "Not in person. They're watching everyone who works in my department now, but I can upload the files to a secure server. Do you have someone who can access it?" Michael handed the phone to David, who took down the technical details. An hour later, they were looking at the most damning evidence yet. Detailed instructions from Global Tech executives on how to manipulate testing procedures to ensure FC-230 appeared to fall within regulatory limits. "This is it," Michael said, a grim satisfaction in his voice. "This proves they've been deliberately deceiving federal regulators." "So what's our next move?" Lily asked. Michael thought for a moment. "We go big. File a class action lawsuit representing all affected workers. Send everything we have to the EPA, OSHA, and the Justice Department. And we contact the media. All of it on the same day. Global Tech will fight back hard," David warned. "They already are," Michael replied. "The difference is now we're ready for them." As they finalized their plans, none of them noticed the van parked across the street or the directional microphone pointed at Michael's apartment window. The next morning, Kevin from Environmental Compliance didn't show up for work at Global Tech. By afternoon, his apartment had been emptied, his social media accounts deleted. When Howard Phillips tried to withdraw money from his bank account, he discovered his assets had been frozen due to a security concern. And as Michael Chen stepped out of his apartment building, a car screeched to a halt beside him. "Michael Chen?" a gruff voice called out. "Who's asking?" "Federal agents. We need you to come with us now." The game had changed again and the stakes were higher than ever. The federal agents guided Michael into the back seat of their vehicle. His mind raced through possibilities. Was this Global Tech's doing? Had they somehow manipulated law enforcement? "Where are we going?" Michael asked, keeping his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Federal building, downtown," one agent replied curtly. Michael noticed they hadn't read him his rights or mentioned any charges. That could be good or bad. "Can I ask what this is about?" "Director Pierce will explain everything when we arrive." The car ride was silent after that. Michael focused on memorizing the turns, tracking their route in his mind. Left from his apartment, then right onto Main Street. They were indeed heading downtown. At the federal building, Michael was led through security and up several floors. The agent's footsteps echoed on hard tile, then softened as they entered what Michael guessed was a carpeted office area. Finally, a door opened and he was guided to a chair. "Mr. Chen," a woman's voice said. "I'm Director Abigail Pierce, Environmental Crimes Division, EPA. Thank you for coming in." Michael relaxed slightly. The Environmental Protection Agency made more sense than the FBI or Homeland Security, if this was about Global Tech. "Did I have a choice?" Michael asked. "Honestly, no." There was a hint of wry humor in her voice. "We need to talk about Global Tech Industries and Compound FC-230. Am I under investigation?" "No, Mr. Chen." But we understand you've been gathering evidence about Global Tech's environmental and safety violations. Evidence we're very interested in. This was unexpected. Michael tilted his head, listening carefully to every nuance in her voice, searching for deception. How do you know about my investigation? Papers rustled. 3 days ago, we received an anonymous package containing copies of internal Global Tech documents about FC-230. The sender included a note suggesting we speak with you. Michael thought of Howard Phillips, Kevin from Environmental Compliance. One of them must have decided not to wait. The documents were concerning enough that we launched our own investigation. Pierce continued. What we've found so far corroborates the information in that package. So why am I here? Because we believe you have more evidence and, more importantly, connections to witnesses who can testify about what Global Tech has been doing. Michael considered his options. If the EPA was genuinely investigating, this could be the breakthrough they needed, but he couldn't risk exposing his sources if this was some kind of trap. How do I know this isn't a ploy by Global Tech? They have powerful connections. Director Pierce was silent for a moment. Then came the sound of a door opening and a familiar voice. He's always been careful. That's why I trusted him with this case. Howard, Michael said, surprised. Hello, Michael. Howard Phillips' footsteps approached. It's safe. Director Pierce reached out to me yesterday. I've verified her credentials and authority. For the next 2 hours, Michael shared everything they had discovered about Global Tech's use of FC-230, the pattern of worker illnesses and the company's systematic cover-up. Howard filled in the scientific details about the compound and its health effects. We're prepared to move on this, Director Pierce said when they had finished. But we need to coordinate. Your class action lawsuit and our enforcement actions will be stronger if we time them correctly. Global Tech knows we're gathering evidence, Michael warned. They've already tried to intimidate witnesses, destroy documents. They broke into my office. Did you report it? Yes, but without proof of who was responsible. From now on, you'll have federal protection, Pierce assured him. But we need to move quickly. Global Tech has friends in Washington. If they get wind of our investigation, they might try to shut it down politically. As they worked out a strategy, Michael felt a growing sense of hope. With the EPA involved, Global Tech couldn't simply bury this anymore. When he left the federal building that evening, Michael was escorted by 2 agents to a secure location where Lily and David were waiting. We thought you'd been arrested, Lily exclaimed, hugging him tightly. Almost the opposite, Michael replied with a tired smile. We have new allies. The next week was a blur of activity. Michael and his team worked with EPA investigators, organizing evidence, preparing statements from witnesses, building an airtight case against Global Tech. They set a date, 2 weeks away, when they would file the class action lawsuit, and the EPA would simultaneously announce enforcement actions and heavy fines against the company. But Global Tech wasn't finished fighting. 4 days before their planned announcement, Michael received a call from Maria Gonzalez. Mr. Chen. Her voice trembled. Something's happening. Global Tech lawyers came to my house. They offered me $5 million to drop my case and sign a confidentiality agreement. That's a lot of money, Michael said carefully. Yes, they said I have 24 hours to decide. She paused. They also said they know about my brother's immigration status. That was a threat, Mr. Chen. Michael's grip tightened on his phone. They're desperate, Maria. They know what's coming. What should I do? That's your decision. $5 million would change your life. But what about everyone else who's been hurt? What about Jorge's family? Michael smiled, though she couldn't see it. I was hoping you'd say that. If you can hold on just a few more days, I promise it will be worth it. Similar calls came in throughout the day. Global Tech was approaching all their key witnesses with enormous settlement offers, combined with thinly veiled threats. Most, like Maria, were holding firm, but a few had gone silent. That evening, as Michael worked late in their temporary office, a suite provided by the EPA, his phone rang again. The caller ID showed it was Howard Phillips. Howard, what's up? They're making a move against you, Howard said without preamble. Global Tech's legal team filed an emergency motion questioning your competence to lead this case. Michael sat up straighter. On what grounds? Your blindness. They're claiming the case involves complex scientific and visual evidence that you can't properly evaluate. That's ridiculous. That's like saying a lawyer in a wheelchair couldn't handle a case involving stairs. I know. It's a desperate tactic. But the hearing is scheduled for tomorrow morning. They're pushing for an emergency injunction to remove you from the case. Michael rubbed his forehead. They're trying to delay us, throw us into disarray before the filing date. Exactly. And Michael? Robert Vance will be leading their legal team. He's got a reputation for being ruthless in court. After hanging up, Michael called his team together. Global Tech is challenging my ability to serve as lead counsel, he told them. They're claiming my blindness makes me incapable of handling the scientific evidence. That's discrimination, Lily protested. Yes, but it's a clever legal maneuver, Michael replied. They know a discrimination countersuit would take months to resolve. Meanwhile, our case gets delayed. So what do? David asked. Michael thought for a moment. We turn their tactic against them. If they want to make my blindness an issue, we'll make it the centerpiece of our response. The next morning, the courtroom was packed. Global Tech had brought their full legal team, led by Robert Vance, a silver-haired man known for his aggressive courtroom tactics. News of the hearing had leaked and several reporters sat in the back row. Judge Eleanor Watkins, a no-nonsense veteran of the federal bench, called the court to order. We're here on Global Tech Industries' emergency motion regarding counsel qualifications, she announced. Mr. Vance, you may proceed. Vance approached the podium. Your Honor, Global Tech Industries has the utmost respect for Mr. Chen's accomplishments as an attorney. However, this specific case involves complex scientific evidence, chemical formulas, graphs, and visual data that Mr. Chen, through no fault of his own, simply cannot directly perceive or evaluate. He continued for 15 minutes, arguing that the case required visual inspection of factory layouts, chemical structures, and medical imaging that a blind attorney couldn't adequately assess. When it was Michael's turn, he rose slowly, leaving his notes on the table. He walked to the podium without his cane, having memorized the exact number of steps. Your Honor, Mr. Vance has made an eloquent argument about the importance of seeing evidence. I'd like to demonstrate why his argument is fundamentally flawed. Michael turned toward where Vance sat. Mr. Vance, would you be willing to participate in a brief demonstration? Vance hesitated, then said, I suppose so, Your Honor, with the court's permission. Judge Watkins nodded. Proceed, Mr. Chen. Mr. Vance, I'm going to ask you a series of questions about documents that are already entered into evidence in this case. These are documents your team provided during discovery. Let's start with Exhibit 14, the safety report from 2021. An assistant handed Vance the document. Can you tell me? Michael asked. On page 7, what was the reported safe exposure limit for FC230 in parts per million? Vance flipped through the pages. It states 0.5 parts per million. And on page 23 of Exhibit 22, the internal research memo from Dr. Patel, what exposure level was found to cause neurological symptoms in test subjects? More page turning. 0.3 parts per million, Vance admitted. One more. In Exhibit 37, the email from VP of Operations to the Safety Committee, what was the actual average exposure level recorded in the assembly area where Maria Gonzalez worked? Vance found the page. 0.7 parts per million, he said quietly. Michael nodded. So despite having full vision, you needed to look at each document to answer these basic questions about evidence your own client provided. I, on the other hand, have committed these critical details to memory. He turned to face the judge. Your Honor, my team has developed a comprehensive system for making all evidence accessible. Technical documents are converted to Braille or audio formats. Visual evidence is described in detail by experts. What Mr. Vance sees as a limitation, I've turned into a strength, because I can't rely on visual scanning. I've developed methods to organize and memorize the critical information in this case. Michael gestured toward the courtroom. More importantly, this case isn't about reading chemical formulas. It's about people, workers who trusted their employer to provide a safe environment and were betrayed. It's about a company that knew their chemicals were dangerous but chose profit over safety. He paused, letting his words sink in. If Global Tech truly believed I was incompetent to handle this case, they wouldn't have offered massive settlements to my clients yesterday. They wouldn't have broken into my office to destroy evidence. They're not afraid of my blindness, Your Honor. They're afraid of what I've uncovered despite it. The courtroom was silent when Michael finished. After a moment, Judge Watkins spoke. Mr. Vance, do you have a response? Vance stood. Your Honor, while Mr. Chen's memory is impressive, our concern is about his ability to fully engage with technical evidence moving forward. Judge Watkins considered this. Mr. Chen, in your years of practice, has your visual impairment ever been raised as an issue in your ability to represent clients? Never, Your Honor. I've successfully tried over 70 cases, including others involving technical evidence. The judge nodded. I've heard enough. Motion denied. Mr. Chen's qualifications and abilities are not in question in this court. She leaned forward. And, Mr. Vance, I would caution your client against any further attempts to delay these proceedings with questionable tactics. As they left the courthouse, reporters surrounded Michael. Mr. Chen, is it true you're filing a class action lawsuit against Global Tech? Can you comment on reports that the EPA is investigating Global Tech for environmental violations? How do you respond to Global Tech's attempt to have you removed from the case? Michael held up a hand. I'll have a full statement in a few days. For now, I'll just say this. Today, Global Tech tried to suggest that because I can't see, I can't understand their actions. But sometimes it takes someone who listens carefully to hear the truth that others have missed. As the news of the courthouse drama spread that evening, something unexpected happened. More Global Tech workers, past and present, began coming forward with their stories. The trickle of witnesses became a flood. By midnight, Lily had taken calls from over 30 new potential plaintiffs. Howard Phillips reported that former colleagues from research and development were contacting him, offering to testify. They're watching the news, Lily told Michael. Seeing you stand up to Global Tech in court has given them courage. Michael nodded. Global Tech made a critical mistake today. They thought attacking my blindness would weaken our case. Instead, they've just shined a spotlight on everything we're doing. The next morning, as Michael prepared for a strategy meeting with the EPA, his phone rang. It was Director Pierce. Turn on the news, she said without greeting. Channel 7. David found the remote and turned on the television, describing what appeared on screen. It's Global Tech headquarters. There are police cars, people being led out in handcuffs. The caption says, Breaking news, FBI raids Global Tech offices in connection with federal investigation. Michael smiled. Looks like the storm has finally broken. The raid on Global Tech headquarters changed everything. For days, it dominated the news. Federal agents carried out box after box of documents. High-ranking executives were photographed being escorted out of the building, their faces grim as they ducked into waiting cars. Michael's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Journalists seeking comments. Former Global Tech employees wanting to share their stories. Other attorneys asking to join the class action. It's overwhelming, Lily told him one morning as she sorted through the messages. We've got over 300 potential plaintiffs now. Michael nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. Each one of those people trusted Global Tech to keep them safe. Each one was betrayed. Director Pierce called with updates almost daily. The FBI had seized computer servers containing emails that Global Tech executives thought they had deleted messages, explicitly discussing the dangers of FC-230 and strategies to hide them from regulators. The criminal case is building quickly, she told Michael. The Justice Department is considering charges against 12 current and former executives, including CEO Richard Hammond. 2 weeks after the raid, Michael filed the class action lawsuit on behalf of 347 plaintiffs, current and former Global Tech employees affected by FC-230 exposure. The same day, the EPA announced record fines against the company for environmental violations spanning more than a decade. Global Tech's stock plummeted. Shareholders demanded answers. The board of directors called an emergency meeting. Through it all, Michael kept his focus on the people he represented. He spent hours on the phone with Maria and other lead plaintiffs, explaining developments, answering questions, offering reassurance. What happens now? Maria asked during one such call. Will there be a trial? Probably not, Michael explained. With the evidence that's come out, Global Tech can't risk putting this in front of a jury. They'll try to settle. Is that good or bad? It depends on the terms. We won't accept any settlement that doesn't fully compensate everyone who was harmed and ensure this can't happen again. 3 days later, Robert Vance requested a meeting. They gathered in a conference room at the federal courthouse, Michael and his legal team on one side of the table, Vance and Global Tech's lawyers on the other. The tension in the room was palpable. Mr. Chen, Vance began, his voice lacking its usual confidence. Global Tech wishes to resolve this matter without prolonged litigation. Michael nodded. We're open to discussing a fair settlement. We're prepared to offer $750 million to be distributed among the plaintiffs, with additional funds for ongoing medical monitoring. The number was substantial, but Michael didn't react. And the non-monetary terms? Vance shifted uncomfortably. We're willing to discuss those as well. For the next 4 hours, they negotiated. Global Tech's initial offer evolved into something more comprehensive, not just compensation, but commitments to change their practices, submit to independent monitoring, and support research into treatment for those affected by FC230. At the end of the day, they had the framework of an agreement. As they were preparing to leave, Vance approached Michael privately. You know, he said quietly, when Global Tech first hired me to handle this case, they told me it would be simple. Just one employee making exaggerated claims. And now? Michael asked. Vance sighed. Now I'm advising my client to settle the largest corporate accountability case in history. I underestimated you, Mr. Chen. We all did. Michael smiled slightly. It's a common mistake. Over the next month, the details of the settlement were finalized. The final agreement was unprecedented in scope. Global Tech would establish a $2.3 billion fund for victims, not just the named plaintiffs, but anyone who had worked in facilities using FC230. Over the past 15 years, the company would replace all FC230 systems worldwide with safer alternatives within 18 months. Independent health and safety monitors would have full access to all Global Tech facilities. For the next 10 years, the company would fund research into treatments for those suffering from FC230 exposure. Most significantly, Global Tech agreed to release all documents related to FC230, creating a public record of what had happened and how. When the settlement was announced, the media coverage was intense. Michael found himself at the center of a storm of attention. News programs wanted interviews, law journals requested articles, universities asked him to speak. Through it all, he tried to keep the focus on what mattered, the workers who had been harmed and the changes needed to prevent similar situations in the future. This isn't about one company, he said during a television interview. It's about corporate responsibility everywhere. Workers shouldn't have to choose between their jobs and their health. As the initial media frenzy began to fade, the real work continued. Michael and his team established a process for former Global Tech employees to file claims against the settlement fund. They worked with medical experts to develop screening protocols for those who might have been exposed. 6 months after the settlement, Michael received a call from Senator Eleanor Diaz. Mr. Chen, I chair the Senate Committee on Health and Labor. We're drafting legislation to strengthen whistleblower protections and improve safety regulations for industrial chemicals. We'd value your input. What began as a consulting role evolved into active participation in crafting the new law. Michael traveled to Washington multiple times, testifying before congressional committees, meeting with lawmakers from both parties. The current system failed these workers, he told the Senate committee. Companies calculate that it's cheaper to risk people's lives than to implement proper safety measures. We need to change that equation. The resulting legislation, the Worker Safety and Corporate Accountability Act, passed with broad bipartisan support. It strengthened whistleblower protections, increased penalties for safety violations, and established more rigorous testing requirements for industrial chemicals. When President Harlow signed it into law, Maria Gonzalez stood behind him, representing all the workers whose suffering had led to this moment. This never should have been necessary, the president said during the ceremony, but thanks to the courage of these workers and the determination of their attorney, Michael Chen, our country has taken a significant step forward in protecting the health and safety of every American who goes to work each day. As his profile rose, Michael received numerous offers from large law firms offering substantial salaries and prestigious positions. He declined them all, instead using a portion of his fees from the Global Tech case to establish the Center for Corporate Accountability. The nonprofit organization would provide legal representation to workers and communities affected by corporate negligence, with a special focus on environmental justice cases. He hired both Lily and David as its first full-time staff. Why not take one of those big firm offers? Howard Phillips asked him over dinner one evening. You've earned it, Michael smiled. Those firms represent the Global Techs of the world. I'd rather keep representing the Marias. A year after the settlement, Michael attended a gathering of former Global Tech workers, people who had been part of the class action and were now receiving medical treatment and compensation. The event was held in a community center, filled with the sounds of conversation and occasional laughter. As Michael moved through the room, people stopped him to share their stories. A woman whose migraines had finally been properly diagnosed and treated. A man who had used his settlement to return to school and start a new career. Families of workers who had died finding some measure of closure and knowing the truth had finally come out. Maria found him near the refreshment table. "Mr. Chen," she said warmly, taking his hand. "Or should I call you Michael now that we're not lawyer and client anymore?" He smiled. "Michael is fine. How are you doing, Maria?" "Better. The new treatments are helping with the headaches. And I've been volunteering with your center, talking to other workers who are afraid to come forward." "I heard. You're making a real difference," she squeezed his hand. "You know, when I came to your office that first day after 6 lawyers had turned me away, I'd almost given up hope. I just couldn't understand why no one would listen." "Sometimes people don't see what's right in front of them," Michael replied. "But you did, even without seeing." "I listened, that's all." Maria was quiet for a moment. "Do you remember what you said to me that day?" "You said you couldn't promise results, but you promised to take me seriously. No one else had done that." Later that evening, as the gathering was winding down, a young woman approached Michael. Her footsteps were hesitant, unfamiliar. "Mr. Chen, I'm Tina. Jorge Mendez was my father." Michael's expression softened. "I'm so sorry for your loss, Tina. Your father was very brave. That's why I wanted to meet you, to thank you for finishing what he helped start." Her voice wavered slightly. "And to tell you that I'm in my first year of law school now." Michael smiled. "Your father would be proud. I hope so. I want to do what you did, help people who don't have a voice." As Michael left the community center that night, he reflected on how much had changed because one person had walked into his office seeking help when no one else would listen. The next morning, he arrived at the Center for Corporate Accountability to find his team already busy. 3 new cases had come in overnight, workers at different companies facing situations disturbingly similar to what had happened at Global Tech. "Ready to get started?" Lily asked as she handed him a cup of coffee. Michael nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility but also the satisfaction of necessary work. Always. As he settled at his desk, his fingers moving across the braille display of his computer, Michael thought about something his father had told him long ago. "You listen better than anyone I know." That's a rare gift. It had taken him years to fully understand the power of that gift, how truly hearing what others missed could bring hidden truths to light and change, not just individual lives, but an entire system. The blind lawyer who had taken a case everyone rejected had done more than win justice for one group of workers. He had shown that sometimes seeing clearly requires looking beyond what's visible to the eye.